The allegations Meghan has made are simply not true. Her account does not reflect what actually happened, and it has led the public to a deeply misleading impression. That version of events has no basis in...
The message reached Meghan without warning, stripped of ceremony and impossible to misunderstand. Catherine had drawn a line that reached beyond invitations, appearances, and palace protocol. From that moment forward, the Duchess of Sussex would not be permitted to attend official royal events accompanied by her children. It was not a temporary precaution. It was not a request for distance. It was a direct intervention from the future queen, and it changed the family forever. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Meghan read the first page twice. Then she lowered it onto the table and stared at the names beneath the wording: Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. The document was a household memorandum, a written instruction guiding palace staff and official arrangements, and its meaning was clear. Catherine had blocked her from bringing the children to ceremonies, commemorations, balcony appearances, and gatherings. This was not a private warning. It was an order shaping every royal invitation that followed. The timing made it serious. Invitations were being prepared for a service at St. George's Chapel, the historic church inside Windsor Castle, where royal weddings, funerals, and ceremonies are held. A sealed directive arriving then could not be dismissed as routine administration. Someone wanted the restriction in place before the Sussex family could be included. Catherine sat alone inside her Kensington Palace study after approving the language. She kept one hand on the unsigned duplicate. The future queen had chosen each word carefully, yet her stillness revealed the cost. She knew Meghan would see punishment. She knew Harry would see betrayal. But she also believed a boundary had been crossed. One sentence carried the darkest implication. The memorandum referred to a breakdown of protective family boundaries, language pointing beyond interviews, headlines, or wounded pride. Something involving the children had forced the decision. Whatever had happened, Catherine was no longer willing to treat the feud as an adult quarrel contained behind closed doors. Harry's name remained untouched. He could still attend events alone. That exception created a cruel choice: stand beside his father and brother without his wife and children, or reject the invitation and deepen the separation. A senior aide removed 4 Sussex place cards from the chapel seating plan. 3 went into a locked drawer. Harry's card returned to the table by itself. Meghan turned toward him, anger tightening her voice. "Did your brother know she was going to do this?" Harry did not answer. His silence gave her the answer she feared. But the reason for Catherine's decision lay inside a family wound that reached the children. Behind the palace wording were 2 mothers who believed they were protecting their children from the same institution, but from opposite sides of its walls. Catherine feared another public spectacle that would pull the youngest royals into an adult conflict. Meghan believed exclusion itself was the threat. Between them stood William and Harry, 2 brothers shaped by loss, now watching their own children become part of a battle neither man had been able to prevent. Catherine studied photographs from an earlier royal service, long after everyone else had left the room. George appeared composed. Louis looked distracted, but Charlotte was not watching the ceremony. She was watching the adults. Her eyes moved from William to Harry, then toward Meghan, as though she were trying to understand a tension no one had explained. That detail unsettled the princess, because public appearances were carefully controlled to protect the children from exactly this kind of emotional pressure. Meghan saw the same danger from the opposite direction. Archie and Lilibet's connection to the royal family was more than a title or a place in the line of succession, the official order determining who could inherit the crown. To their mother, it was part of their identity. Every ceremony they missed, every family gathering held without them, threatened to make their British relatives feel more distant and less real. Meghan entered Archie's room after reading the restriction and found him holding an old photograph of Harry beside William. The brothers were younger, smiling, and still appeared inseparable. She sat beside her son, but no explanation came. How could she tell him that the family in the photograph no longer trusted one another enough to stand together? William carried a different fear. He knew Catherine had been considering stronger boundaries, yet he had not expected the final memorandum to name Archie and Lilibet directly. A household memorandum was a formal written instruction used to guide palace decisions, and once those names appeared, the conflict became impossible to contain. Supporting his wife meant protecting Charlotte. Supporting his brother meant questioning the woman who had seen their daughter's distress firsthand. That evening, William asked Catherine whether she was certain. She removed her wedding ring, turned it slowly between her fingers, and stared at the table before answering. "No," she said, "but being uncertain does not make the boundary unnecessary." Harry soon discovered something even more painful. Charles had been informed only after the document was prepared. Catherine had acted before the king could soften the language, delay the order, or allow hope for another public reunion to override her concerns. Years of mistrust had built the wall, but one specific moment involving Charlotte and Meghan had finally sealed it. To understand why Catherine accepted the risk of being called cruel, the story must return to the afternoon when a child's private distress became the palace's point of no return. The final restriction did not begin with a document. It began months earlier in a small withdrawing room, after a family memorial service, when Charlotte entered without speaking and closed the door behind her. The adults outside believed the ceremony had passed without incident. Catherine soon learned otherwise. One private exchange, one frightened reaction, and one sentence repeated by a child became the hidden trigger everyone inside the palace would later recognize as the moment compromise ended. The service at Windsor had been arranged as a rare family gathering, placing the Wales and Sussex households together for the first time in years. A memorial service is a formal ceremony held to honor someone who has died, but palace aides had been told to keep the atmosphere calm and informal once the prayers ended. Every movement mattered, because one awkward exchange could become another public fracture. Meghan saw Charlotte standing apart and approached her quietly. She wanted the young princess to understand that the conflict between the adults did not have to divide the cousins. But inside a side corridor, she said something that carried far more weight than she intended. "One day the children may have to explain what really happened to this family." Charlotte did not answer. She walked away and found Catherine alone in the withdrawing room, a private space used by royals to step away from formal events. The girl closed the door, looked at her mother, and asked whether she would someday have to choose between Papa's side and Uncle Harry's side. Catherine's composure broke. She knelt immediately, held her daughter's hands, and promised that no child would ever be forced to make that choice. Yet the question remained. It had entered Charlotte's mind, and no reassurance could erase the fact that adult pain had reached her. Meghan later insisted during a recorded private call with Harry that her words had been misunderstood. She said she had tried to protect the cousins from future confusion, not frighten them. Catherine did not accuse her of deliberate harm. But to the princess, intention stopped mattering once a child began carrying fears created by adults. A female protection officer had overheard part of the corridor exchange and filed a private welfare note, an internal record used when staff believe a child's emotional safety may need attention. That note transformed a painful family moment into an official concern. William resisted restrictions at first. He feared Harry would see them as punishment. Then Charlotte repeated the same question at bedtime several nights later, and the future king's resistance collapsed. Catherine placed the officer's note beside her daughter's handwritten school timetable. She drew a firm line beneath the words, "future joint appearances." When Meghan learned that Windsor was being used to justify the ban, she demanded a meeting without advisors. The confrontation ahead was no longer about protocol. It was two mothers entering the same room, each convinced the other had endangered her child. No aides entered the room. No private secretary remained to soften the language. Catherine and Meghan faced one another across a narrow table with the memorandum placed between them, like evidence at a trial. One wanted the order withdrawn. The other had already decided it would stand. Years of restrained resentment pressed into a conversation that began quietly, sharpened within minutes, and ended with a physical gesture more final than any royal proclamation. Meghan arrived believing there was still room to negotiate. She had not expected full access to every ceremony, but she wanted limited attendance at family occasions connected to Charles. The memorandum, a formal written instruction used to guide palace decisions, had closed that door before she entered. She looked directly at Catherine and asked whether Archie and Lilibet were truly being pushed out of their own family. Catherine answered carefully. She said the children were not being rejected as relatives. Private contact could continue. Birthdays, quiet visits, and time with their grandfather were not the issue. Official royal attendance was different, because those events placed every gesture under public judgment, and turned even a brief family exchange into a symbol of reconciliation. Meghan heard control, not protection. She accused Catherine of using the children to pressure Harry and punish him for leaving royal life. She said two young people were being made to pay for choices they had never made. Catherine did not raise her voice. She spoke of Charlotte instead. The future queen said her daughter's fear proved that the adults had already allowed the conflict to enter the children's lives. Waiting for a second incident would not be patience. It would be failure. Meghan then revealed that she had already discussed the next major service with Charles during a recorded private telephone conversation. The king had sounded hopeful about seeing all his grandchildren together. She believed his warmth meant the family was ready to try again. Catherine's answer changed the room. She confirmed that Charles had not been consulted before the restriction was drafted. His longing for reunion, she said, had repeatedly made him overlook how much pressure public appearances placed on the children. She would not allow hope to become another excuse for risk. Meghan pushed the memorandum across the table. "I will not accept this." Catherine placed one hand on the document and slid it back. "Acceptance is not required." Meghan stood so quickly that her chair remained angled away from the table. She left without another word. After the door closed, Catherine stayed still for several seconds, then quietly straightened the chair with trembling hands. The confrontation was over, but the real decision had only begun. The two women had spoken. Now Charles had to decide whether Catherine had exceeded her authority or acted where the crown had repeatedly failed. Charles received the file alone. For several minutes he read without moving, pausing longest at the names of Archie and Lilibet. The decision before him was mercilessly simple. He could overrule Catherine and preserve the possibility of a public family reunion, or support her and accept that some royal doors would remain closed to two of his grandchildren. The king had authority over the institution, but not over the wounds inside his family. William entered only after his father had finished reading. The royal household, the network of staff and offices that manages the monarch's public and private duties, could revise every invitation if Charles ordered it. Yet reversing Catherine's decision would place the monarch in direct conflict with the future king and queen. It would also tell Charlotte that the boundary created after her distress could be removed for the sake of appearances. William explained that the restriction applied only to official events. Archie and Lilibet could still meet their grandfather privately, away from cameras, formal ceremonies, and the Wales children. The prince spoke carefully because he understood what the distinction would cost Harry. Private affection could continue. Public unity could not be performed. Charles looked toward the photograph on his desk and admitted what he wanted most. One image showing every grandchild together. William did not soften his answer. "A photograph cannot prove this family is healed." The king flinched. His son then said that repeated attempts at symbolic reconciliation had placed appearances above the children's peace. Charles heard the accusation beneath the words. His hope had become pressure. His longing had asked the youngest members of the family to carry a burden the adults had failed to resolve. Camilla joined them after reading the memorandum. She advised her husband not to overrule Catherine. The queen consort warned that forcing both households into one public ceremony could produce an even more damaging confrontation, this time beneath the eyes of the world. A constitutional advisor later confirmed the limit of Catherine's authority during a documented palace consultation. She could recommend restrictions, but she could not independently exclude guests from every royal occasion. Charles, however, could adopt her recommendation as household policy through a signed directive, a formal instruction binding palace staff. The monarch reached for his fountain pen, then stopped. "Will Archie and Lilibet believe I chose the crown over them?" No one answered. Charles signed a limited order supporting the restriction at official events involving the Wales children. He set the pen down and turned the grandchildren's photograph face down. By the time Harry tried to reach his father, the signature was dry. The invitations were being altered, and the first consequences were already moving through the family. Harry did not hear the final decision from his father. He saw it in a revised invitation bearing only his name. There was no entry for Meghan, no mention of Archie or Lilibet. The empty space beneath his name said what the palace had refused to say aloud. He could return, but he had to return alone. For a man who once fled royal life to protect his family, the invitation felt less like an opening than a demand. Harry read the details again. The national service, a major public ceremony representing the crown and the country, still listed him as the king's son. Yet palace staff had already removed Meghan and the children from transport plans, security arrangements, and the seating chart. The restriction was no longer just language inside a file. It had become a machine, and every part of that machine was now moving without them. Harry called William immediately. He did not hide his anger. He demanded to know why Catherine had been allowed to make a decision that reached into his family and named his children. William answered with equal force. Charlotte had been drawn into the conflict, he said, and that changed everything. The future king insisted the boundary was not revenge, it was protection. But Harry heard only one truth. His brother had chosen Catherine's fear over his own children's place in the family. Meghan saw the invitation as a test designed to divide them. She told Harry that attending alone would confirm the palace had the right to exclude her and the children whenever it wished. He argued that refusing might destroy his final direct connection to Charles. Their disagreement cut deeper because both believed they were defending the family. Harry then found a handwritten note inside the envelope. Charles had written it himself, expressing love for Meghan, Archie, and Lilibet, while refusing to reverse the restriction. The king also offered a private meeting with the children at a neutral residence, a place away from cameras, formal duties, and palace control. He was trying to separate his role as grandfather from his public role as monarch. Harry folded the invitation once, then again. His hands tightened as if he might tear it apart, but he stopped. He placed it inside a drawer beside childhood letters from Diana and closed it with both hands. Meghan quietly returned the children's formal clothes to the wardrobe. She paused over Lilibet's coat, pressed it against her chest, and said nothing. Harry's anger began to shift. He no longer wanted another argument through staff or documents. He wanted to hear what Charlotte had experienced. The dispute had reached its lowest point, but movement came only when Harry asked to meet Catherine alone, without spouses, advisors, or rehearsed defenses. Harry entered expecting another defense of palace control. Instead, Catherine brought no memorandum, no advisor, and no list of conditions. On the table sat a single sheet of paper covered in Charlotte's handwriting. The conversation that followed did not repair the brothers' relationship or erase years of accusation. It did something smaller and more important. It forced two adults to confront the cost of allowing their pain to become a burden carried by children who never created it. Catherine had agreed to the private meeting because she knew the restriction would remain destructive unless Harry understood why it existed. She did not want him to see revenge against Meghan, where she believed there had been a response to a child's fear. The policy, a formal rule guiding who could attend official events, still stood, but she wanted its purpose understood before anger hardened around it. Harry arrived determined to defend Archie and Lilibet. He feared they were being pushed outside the family and turned into symbols of their parents' choices. Catherine carried the opposite fear. George, Charlotte, and Louis could not become proof that a broken family had healed, simply because adults wanted a photograph. Catherine slid the school paper toward him. Charlotte had written that families sometimes make children stand in the middle. Harry read the sentence once, then again. The anger he had prepared began to disappear. He admitted that his deepest fear was that Archie and Lilibet would grow up believing their royal relatives had rejected them. Catherine answered quietly. Forced closeness before trust existed would not protect the children. It would place them inside another public performance. And when that performance failed, the rejection would feel even deeper. Harry then explained Meghan's words at Windsor through a recorded account she had given him after the incident. She had feared that Archie and Lilibet would someday hear only the palace's version of the family breakdown. She had not intended to pull Charlotte toward one side. Catherine listened, but she did not excuse the effect those words had caused. Catherine finally revealed the limit of her decision. She was willing to reconsider the restriction after a sustained period of private family contact with no cameras, no public statements, and no adult arguments in front of the children. Harry did not ask her to apologize for protecting Charlotte. She did not ask him to abandon Meghan. They agreed on one rule. Neither household would speak to the children about blame, betrayal, or who had been right. Before leaving, Harry folded Charlotte's paper along an existing crease. He stopped, opened it again, and carefully smoothed it flat. Catherine said nothing. The palace boundary remained, but its meaning had changed, just as the world was about to judge it, without knowing the sorrow behind it. By sunrise, the private decision belonged to the world. Broadcasters called it an unprecedented act of exclusion. Commentators framed Catherine as either a protective mother or a future queen consolidating power. Meghan became the face of rejection, while 4 children were reduced to symbols in a family argument. Yet one moment outside Windsor captured the public mood more powerfully than any studio debate. Two handwritten signs held only a few feet apart. A major Sunday newspaper placed Catherine and Meghan side by side beneath the headline, "The Palace Line. Children kept apart as royal feud hardens." The story spread before breakfast, because the restriction was no longer being treated as a private disagreement. It had become a question of royal authority, family access, and whether the monarchy could separate its public duties from its deepest personal wounds. A national broadcaster intensified the pressure that evening. Its lead presenter described the order as a family safeguard with constitutional consequences, meaning a private protective decision that could also affect how the crown exercised power. Charles had formally approved Catherine's recommendation, and that signature made the boundary far more difficult to dismiss. Meghan's supporters accused the palace of punishing Archie and Lilibet for choices made by their parents. Catherine's defenders answered that Charlotte had already been emotionally affected, and that waiting for another incident would have been reckless. Both sides spoke of protecting children. Neither side agreed on what protection meant. Harry watched the coverage without responding. A panel debated whether he should attend the coming service alone, as though his marriage and fatherhood were pieces in a public strategy. Meghan reached for the remote when one commentator began guessing how Archie might interpret the exclusion. She switched off the television before the sentence ended. The palace then released a brief written statement confirming that arrangements involving minors were guided by welfare and security concerns. It refused to explain the Windsor incident, protecting Charlotte's privacy, but leaving the public free to imagine motives even darker than the truth. A separate documented briefing revealed that Charles had offered private contact with Archie and Lilibet. The disclosure shifted the argument. This was not complete family rejection. It was a division between access to a grandfather and participation in royal life. Outside Windsor Castle, one woman held a sign reading, "Protect all the children." Another stood nearby holding, "Do not make them perform peace." Their image dominated the evening reports. Catherine saw the photograph while preparing George, Charlotte, and Louis for school. She closed the tablet before they entered and calmly asked whether everyone had remembered their bags. The world saw winners and losers, but the real verdict would be delivered privately, through what Catherine, Meghan, Harry, William, and Charles chose after the noise faded. The restriction remained. Meghan did not attend future official royal events with Archie and Lilibet, and Harry refused the first invitation requiring him to appear alone. Yet the family did not collapse into another public war. Instead, the adults accepted a painful truth they had resisted for years. Children could not be used to prove unity, repair reputations, or complete the image of a healed monarchy. The palace doors closed, but a quieter, more honest path finally opened elsewhere. Catherine's decision became a standing policy for official events involving George, Charlotte, and Louis. A standing policy is an ongoing rule used to guide future palace arrangements, and this one carried a clear condition. Public reunions would not happen before private trust had been rebuilt. The future queen did not call it permanent rejection. She called it protection, with a path back, though no one pretended that path would be easy. Meghan remained deeply wounded. She did not approve of the restriction, and she did not forgive the way Archie and Lilibet had been named. But she agreed that the children would no longer be prepared for ceremonies before invitations were final. She would not let them dress for a family appearance, only to watch another palace decision take it away. Harry declined the first service rather than attending without them. In a private handwritten letter to Charles, he explained that his absence was not revenge. He refused, because attending alone would turn the ceremony into another public test of whether he had chosen his father or his wife. William warned Catherine that the decision might define how the world judged her for years. She listened, then answered with quiet certainty. Protecting the children matters more than controlling the judgment. Charles accepted the loss of the public reunion he had wanted. The king arranged to meet Archie and Lilibet privately, away from palaces, cameras, uniforms, and ceremony. He finally understood that being their grandfather could not depend on whether they participated in royal life. Catherine and Meghan did not reconcile. Through Harry, however, they accepted one shared rule. Neither household would speak to the children about blame, betrayal, inheritance, or which side had been right. Weeks later, Catherine received a plain envelope containing a drawing from Archie and Lilibet for their cousins. She placed it on the nursery table instead of sending it through palace offices. The connection would remain private, untouched by headlines. Her action had been severe, but its final meaning was not vengeance. The crown lost the appearance of effortless unity and gained something more truthful, an admission that royal children were human beings before they were symbols. The gates did not close because the children belonged to opposing sides. They closed because, at last, one generation decided the children would not be asked to choose a side at all. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.